He was a once-in-a-generation genius, pushing the fusion of martial arts and mecha to the absolute limit. Yet, in the end, only half of his skull remained. Ambushed by thousands of interstellar warships deep in space, he was all but destroyed. As a perfect blend of man and machine, he tore through enemy lines like a god of war. Even when surrounded by concentrated fire, he deflected every blast with nothing but a wooden staff. Not even colossal warships could withstand a single strike from his blade. But just when victory was within reach, the enemy unleashed a force beyond his comprehension, a power so overwhelming it broke through even his defenses. In the next instant, crack, his mech began to shatter. When he opened his eyes again, 200 years had passed. His name was Xiang Shan, and at this moment, he had no idea that only half of his skull remained. It wasn't until an old man and a kid told him the truth that he finally understood. But that wasn't even the worst part. He couldn't remember anything, couldn't think, and even basic communication had become nearly impossible. The real problem was that the support systems on the side of his bio-brain were completely fried, leaving the old man utterly stunned. He quickly turned to the boy beside him and asked, "Where the hell did you dig up this thing?" As it turned out, the kid had been scavenging the battlefield scrapyard like he always did. But this time, he discovered a new soft tissue zone buried deep beneath the wreckage, and that's where he found Xiang Shan, barely clinging to life. When he noticed a man's eyeballs still moving ever so slightly, he jumped with joy on the spot and swore to fix this broken guy and make him his brand new dad. Turns out the boy had grown up without a father, and to fill that void, he'd already adopted several dads over the years. This time, he was determined not to be mocked by the other kids again, so he brought Xiang Shan home. The old man with a glass dome over his brain was the mayor of the scrapyard town, and the boy's name was Yuki. They lived in the ruins of a bio-war era, a wasteland where everyone survived by scavenging trash. And if there was nothing left to scavenge, then people simply sold parts of their own bodies. Over time, the entire town became a grotesque shadow of humanity. To make things easier, the mayor casually gave Xiang Shan a new name, Yorg. But the moment he heard it, Xiang Shan felt something was off. The name stirred something in his memory. He knew it meant something, but it definitely wasn't his. As he passed out again, Yuki rushed to his side and shouted, "Dad!" Xiang Shan was completely baffled. "Wait, I have a son?" The mayor chuckled and stepped in to explain the situation. Just then, a mechanical click echoed as a surveillance camera suddenly extended from a corner. It scolded Yuki furiously for dragging home a dead man's head. Yuki lowered his voice and mumbled, "Sorry, Mom." That one word, Mom, left Xiang Shan utterly dumbfounded. Did he just call a camera Mom? But that wasn't her actual body. Her true form was a heavily modified, beat-up old truck. Her name was Ulia. To feed her 7 kids, she had sold off her cerebellum and brainstem, converting herself into a 100-ton construction machine. Even so, she couldn't protect them all. 4 had died from illness, and 1 had been taken away as a so-called gene tax. Hearing the mayor explain all this, Xiang Shan felt a surge of indescribable emotion. Grief, disbelief, perhaps even guilt. In his memory, humanity was never supposed to end up like this. The mayor seemed to sense his thoughts and interrupted calmly, "Forget Ulia. You're the real anomaly here. This scrapyard was unearthed 50 years ago, and the bio-war happened even earlier. No living brain cell should have survived this long." And seeing Xiang Shan's current state, the mayor realized there was no way he could get any clear answers from him. So, he pulled out an old CPU from the 2050s and slotted it straight into Xiang Shan's skull. As the system began to slowly update and initialize, BZZ, his vision finally started to sharpen and stabilize. Bits and pieces of his memories began to flicker back into his mind. He still couldn't recall everything, but one thing he was absolutely certain of: the name Yorg belonged to his sworn enemy. The next morning, Yuki brought him a basic prosthetic body with a pair of mechanical arms. With hands of his own again, Xiang Shan could finally move around on his own. So he followed Yuki to the outskirts of town, to the foot of a strange tree known as the Copper Sugar Tree. As the name suggested, this tree oozed a liquid resembling copper-laced syrup, one of the most vital resources for the junkyard town's survival. Every day, designated workers came to harvest the copper syrup from the tree. Shockingly, it served as the main food source for the people of this era. Without thinking too much, Xiang Shan took a sip straight from the ladle. But the moment it touched his tongue, he knew something was seriously wrong. How could any human possibly drink something like liquid copper? On top of that, all the trees were gray. Was he losing his mind, or had the entire world already gone mad? What kind of evolution could twist reality into this? What the hell happened to this world? Just then, Yuki interrupted his thoughts. He tugged on Xiang Shan's arm and led him toward a towering mountain of trash in the distance. Yuki started by strapping a dented kettle to Xiang Shan's cracked skull as makeshift head armor. Then he dug up a bunch of junkyard parts, prepping to assemble a crude prosthetic body. Watching the transformation, Yuki practically sparkled with excitement. Going from half a head to a full mech body, that was seriously cool. Xiang Shan, on the other hand, wasn't having it. Seriously? A freaking teapot on my head? Still, having hands again made life a lot easier. At least now he could tweak the prosthetics himself. The arm was old and a bit clunky, sure, but it was better than nothing. His eyes, though, those were premium gear. Not only could they autofocus perfectly, but the zoom range was downright ridiculous. With just a bit of adjustment, he could clearly see objects miles away. But before he could finish admiring his ultra vision, a sudden shockwave slammed into him, sending him flying. As he turned and squinted, he saw him clearly. It was Enoch. Enoch shrugged with mock indifference. "You're just too small. I didn't even notice you." But when he saw Xiang Shan's patched-up body, he burst into mocking laughter. Xiang Shan narrowed his eyes. "So what? You got a crush on Ulia? What's it got to do with me?" Hearing that name made Enoch explode. "You junkyard reject! Don't even deserve to say her name!" With that, he lunged forward again, ready to attack. But Xiang Shan was already running calculations in his head. If he dove into the tire stack 1 second before impact, Enoch wouldn't have enough time to turn. Then, if he grabbed the rotating shaft and used vibration torque to loosen the main bolts, Enoch would collapse like a pile of spare parts. Damn, I really am a genius. But just as he was preparing to move, a blueprint suddenly lit up in his vision. Enoch's entire structural layout appeared before his eyes. Enoch saw him frozen in place and smirked. "If it weren't for the Dyson rule banning murder, you'd already be a pile of scrap metal." With one final taunt, Enoch spun around and disappeared in a cloud of dust. All that remained for poor Xiang Shan was a thick blast of engine fumes to the face. Staring after him, Xiang Shan mumbled, "The Dyson rule? What even is that? And who made it? More importantly, who's really in control of this world? And the gene tax the mayor mentioned, who's collecting that?" Yuki didn't seem too interested. Whoever made those rules is probably way above our pay grade. But hey, I'm more curious about you. Don't tell me you're one of those Paralympic champions? Xiang Shan blinked in confusion. Paralympics? In this era, the so-called Paralympics had evolved into a global gladiator tournament where cyber-enhanced warriors clashed for glory in the biggest sporting event of the age. Xiang Shan was totally lost, overwhelmed by the sheer amount of information being thrown at him. In Xiang Shan's fragmented memories, true martial arts wasn't just about flashy moves. It hinged on mastering powerful internal energy techniques. Yuki's eyes lit up. Then maybe you used to be a shaka? In this world, shaka referred to one of the most feared militant factions. They worshipped a dark deity named Mod and took inspiration from a long-dead rebel named Aaron Swartz, seeking to destroy civilization and rebuild it in their own twisted image. Xiang Shan frowned. Based on the fragments in my head, I might have been one of them. Yuki didn't push for answers. Well, whoever you were, let's focus on getting you some decent parts for your lower half. You're hands down the most pitiful bot I've ever seen. Only half a head's original, the rest all cobbled together from junkyard trash. Even Yuki and the mayor stood in silence, staring at his shaky makeshift frame, ugly and useless. And who the heck uses solid steel rods for joints? The thing looked like it'll snap just from sneezing. But Xiangshan didn't seem to mind at all. He started moving his new limbs, every motion creaking with metallic groans, and he actually looked kind of proud. The mayor looked at Xiangshan and immediately panicked. "Don't tell me he's about to go rogue on us." But Xiangshan simply raised his head and gave them a polite, if not incredibly awkward, smile. Yuki blinked. "Yep, something's definitely not right with your wiring." The mayor finally let out a sigh of relief. "At least we got your body patched up before the tax officers arrive. Every settlement is required to hand over newborns annually as part of the so-called gene tax, a system meant to preserve the human genome. If a town fails to pay up, they're stripped of government protection, left to fend for themselves. And when that happens, the Shaka, those violence-worshipping maniacs, swoop in and turn the town into a bloodbath." Xiangshan was stunned. "Isn't that just straight-up extortion?" Glancing down at his ragtag body, he clenched his fists. No matter what, he couldn't let this town suffer because of him. As that thought crossed his mind, 3 aircraft thundered into view above them, casting long shadows across the town below. Rows of snow-white robots descended from the aircraft, each equipped with overhead surveillance units and armed to the teeth. Moments later, a towering man in military uniform strode forward, a vicious-looking dog on a leash by his side. The mayor quickly stepped up with a forced smile. This was clearly the man's first time visiting the town, but the moment their eyes met, the mayor felt an overwhelming pressure that nearly crushed his breath. His legs buckled, and he dropped to his knees with a thud. One of the man's attendants barked, "Is this how you vermin welcome a sub-citizen officer?" Terrified, the townspeople immediately fell to their knees, faces pale and trembling. The man stood motionless, gazing down at the crowd with detached disdain as if he were observing a pit of diseased lab rats. Then, cutting through the tense silence, came the sudden wail of a crying child. The boy's father panicked, scrambling to cover his mouth while dropping to his knees, stammering an apology. But it was too late. The man's boot had already lifted off the ground. He didn't stomp. Instead, he gently placed his foot on top of the crying baby's head. "Relax. Why would I kill my tax revenue?" he sneered. But the nightmare wasn't over. Glancing at the datapad in his attendant's hands, his tone grew cold. Your village's death rate seems unusually high. Could it be tax evasion?" Without another word, he pulled out a sleek handgun. Bang, bang, bang. A burst of gunfire rang out, bullets flying in a perfect circle around the mayor, neatly framing him as the epicenter. The man spoke calmly, as if delivering a weather report. "Today, every one of you. If just one person can last 5 minutes against my dog in combat, I'll approve your population count." The mayor trembled. This wasn't negotiation. It was theatrical cruelty. The attendant's control pad glowed ominously red as he activated the combat mode. He casually reminded the dog, "Try not to kill too many this time." At that moment, a towering, heavily built cyborg stepped into the circle. The battle between man and beast was about to begin. One of the scrapyard's larger workers stepped forward without hesitation, volunteering to fight. But he clearly underestimated the creature before him. As the fight began, the worker raised both arms, his fists humming as they charged with kinetic energy. With a roar, he charged straight at the dog. But any creature chosen for a trial like this was no ordinary mutt. In a flash, the dog leaped high into the air, landing squarely on the worker's arm. It began darting between his limbs at blinding speed, moving so fast it was nearly impossible to track. Watching from the sidelines, Xiangshan narrowed his eyes, instantly sensing something was off. "Of course," he muttered. "That's no regular beast. Back in the old days, humans were obsessed with biomechanical fusion, turning animals into lethal living weapons." Due to their small size and incredible speed, these biomechanical dogs inspired the creation of a specialized martial art, Bionic Fist. While the crowd was still gasping, the dog had already clamped its jaws around the worker's artificial blood vessel. With a savage tug, the tubing tore free from the prosthetic limb, causing the man to collapse unconscious. The defeat itself wasn't all that surprising, but when everyone looked at the timer, They were stunned to see that only 5 seconds had passed. The mayor tried to brush it off. "It's fine. Artificial organs can be repaired. But who's up next?" He turned to another burly man nearby. "Desley, you're in." Amid reluctant cheers and peer pressure, Desley forced himself to step into the ring. Meanwhile, Shangshan's expression had grown grim. This dog wasn't just fast. It had to contain a fully functional human brain, and not just any brain, a martial artist's. No one else could execute Bionic Fist with that level of precision and brutality. But before Shangshan could finish his thoughts, Desley's blood tubes were already being ripped out by the dog. The timer, another 5 seconds. Exactly the same. No matter who stepped into the ring, the outcome never changed. 5 seconds. The mayor's face had gone pale. "Even if all of us go in, we still won't last 5 minutes." Yuki stared at the beast in awe. "So, this is what real martial arts looks like." But Xiangshan roared, his voice shaking the air. "This isn't martial arts at all." The martial arts he remembered, true martial arts, were never tools of oppression. They were born of resistance, a way for the weak to stand tall against tyrants, not to crush the helpless. As more and more workers fell, blood splattering across rusted metal, Xiangshan began to walk forward, one heavy step after another. Yuki rushed behind him, grabbing his arm in panic. "You can't! That broken body of yours will fall apart the moment you fight!" But Xiangshan shrugged him off like a ghost possessed, his pace unwavering, his eyes locked on the beast ahead. But just when everyone expected a heroic entrance, Xiangshan suddenly collapsed to his knees with a loud thud. Turns out, he hadn't volunteered. Someone had shoved him into the ring from the sidelines. The tax officer stared at his mismatched prosthetics and muttered, "What is this? Performance art?" But under the weight of 100 stares, Xiangshan slowly rose to his feet. This feeling, this burning sensation in his chest, it felt strangely familiar. Memories from a past life began to surface. Only through combat could he bridge who he was with who he used to be. He exhaled and stepped forward. "If it's a fight you want, then come." He knew damn well, with this wreck of a body, defeating the bionic hellhound was a fantasy. His eyes scanned the ground, then locked onto a fallen stun baton. "That's my only shot." The dog, meanwhile, didn't even see him as a threat. With a savage snarl, it lunged straight for his throat, teeth bared, eyes locked on the kill. Just when everyone thought Jorg was done for, the dog sank its teeth right into his exposed battery pack. But it turns out, being broken had its perks. The battery sparked violently, surging with raw voltage. In that split second, Xiangshan slammed his fist forward, sending the dog flying. He quickly realized this wasn't some mindless mutt. It had gone straight for his power source. It was aiming to end the fight in one bite. But before he could think more, that long-lost fire surged through his veins. "This feeling, I missed it." The dog recovered and lunged again, a blur of metal and fury. Xiangshan's left arm shot up and crashed down like a hammer. Thud. The beast hit the ground hard, limbs flailing, knocked flat on its back. Everyone watching froze. No one expected that pile of junk to hit like a war machine. Xiangshan didn't waste a second. His eyes locked onto the fallen stun baton. He reached for it, ready to finish this, but the dog quickly adapted, latching onto Xiangshan's left leg with its jaws and yanking backward with brutal force. Yet all it managed to do was slow him down. His prosthetic body couldn't even register pain. All external martial arts techniques, including Bionic Fist, had to obey Newtonian physics. According to its logic, disabling an opponent's legs came first. Xiangshan stomped forward with his right leg, regaining balance instantly. Based on the dog's shoulder height, no matter how strong it was, it couldn't destabilize a full-grown cyborg's stance in a single tug. But then, in a sudden shift, the dog released his left leg and lunged straight at the right one. Xiangshan seized the moment, his right foot surging forward, aiming a brutal kick at the beast's exposed underbelly. But just as the strike was about to land, the dog defied all expectations. Its front limbs had been reinforced with weighted modules. Using the extra momentum, it dodged the attack, then launched into a rapid backflip and cleanly tore Xiangshan's head clean off. The tax officer froze, blinking. What the? This junk pile fights like a martial artist, but I don't sense any internal energy. Could be the corpse of a dead external-style master? The Dyson rule strictly forbids the killing of human beings, but the loophole, as long as the biological brain remains intact, everything else is fair game. In the blink of an eye, the man and the dog had already completed another brutal exchange. The dog narrowed its eyes. This pile of junk, it's reading my moves. But Xiangshan didn't hesitate. He launched into a spinning sweep kick. It wasn't fast, but the timing was flawless. The dog was struck cleanly and sent soaring into the air. Seizing the moment, Xiangshan dove down to grab the stun baton, but the force snapped his right prosthetic leg with a sickening crack. The dog landed and stood tall, eyeing him coldly. Hey, didn't expect some backwater hick to put up a fight. As it spoke, its jaws slowly opened. From within emerged a steel helmet, sliding outward piece by piece. When the entire unit had been revealed, the crowd gasped in horror. It wasn't just a combat dog. There was a human martial artist housed inside. Xiangshan froze, completely dumbfounded. A wave of nausea hit him, but then he remembered he didn't have a stomach anymore. The man burst into wild laughter, his voice booming like thunder. Tell me your name. Xiangshan paused for a moment, then muttered calmly, My name is Xiangshan, the mountain no one crosses. Will didn't give him time for dramatic pauses. His rear-mounted thrusters ignited with a rising hiss. Xiangshan squared his stance, eyes locked forward. I'm a world-renowned martial artist. In a blink of an eye, Will launched forward like a missile, rocketing toward him. His front paw slammed down, aiming straight for the exposed battery on Xiangshan's chest. At the same time, his jaws clamped down on the cyborg's arm. But he didn't notice the stun baton that had already been slipped under his thruster nozzle. A surge of electricity exploded through his body in a violent, crackling blast. And then, boom! A deafening explosion rocked the arena as the thruster detonated in a burst of fire and smoke. The explosion's shockwave blasted Will straight into the air, sending him crashing into the ground like a broken machine. Xiangshan's battery, overwhelmed by the surge, fell from his chest and clattered to the floor. Paralyzed, he whispered through the static in his voice modulator. The title, Xiangshan of the Southern Peak. I fought with my life to earn it. Will lay twitching on the ground, no longer a threat, just a burned-out husk of what used to be a killing machine. The tax officer checked the timer in silence. Technically, the 5-minute challenge wasn't over, but the dog was clearly finished. He stepped forward slowly, and, to everyone's shock, gently reconnected the battery into Xiangshan's chest port. Xiangshan stared at him, overwhelmed. It had been so long since he felt this. Victory. He wanted to cry, to scream, to let out the storm in his chest. But this body had no tear ducts, no vocal processor advanced enough to simulate sobbing. Even now, the hand he raised felt nothing, no warmth, no touch. The living, breathing body he once had was gone. What good was a brain without a soul to carry it? Xiangshan pounded his metal torso with trembling fists, trying to vent the fury and despair boiling inside him. His mind flashed back to that battle, the battle he lost. It was my failure that doomed the world to become this. He clutched his head, curling into himself, repeating the same 3 words. I lost. I lost. He lifted his gaze toward the world around him, to the humans with steel limbs instead of flesh, to the monstrous tax officer who could end lives with a word, and to the proud martial artist who had become nothing more than a hound in a cage. The tax officer strolled forward, amused by the sight. You want to fight, yet look like you're about to cry. Pathetic. He had originally considered recruiting Xiangshan, but now he wasn't so sure this broken man deserved the offer. Without a word, the tax officer walked over to Will's broken form, pulled out the stun baton, and casually plunged it into his core, executing him on the spot. Then he turned to the mayor. This year we'll take 18 newborns as tax. The mayor blinked in confusion. 18? There were supposed to be 19, but with his lowly status, he dared not ask. He just stood there, stiff, afraid to breathe too loudly. Once the tax officer and his team departed, silence fell like a heavy curtain. The mayor stared at what remained of Will, a genuine martial artist's corpse discarded like trash. Xiangshan finally stirred. He stepped forward, lifted the body onto his shoulder, and began walking through the crowd without a word. But he hadn't gone far before some greedy eyes gleamed. People tried to snatch away his spoils. Only this time, Xiangshan didn't flinch. He didn't hesitate. He had faced down that dog, and something inside him had changed. Even Yuki could feel it. He muttered under his breath. Did he remember something? Xiangshan motioned for Yuki to come closer, his voice low and serious. What I'm about to say, if word gets out, it won't just bring disaster to you and your mother. The entire town could be in danger. Yuki leaned in, eyes wide with anticipation. But just as he was about to speak, Xiangshan hesitated. Forget it. I won't say anything. Yuki practically jumped in frustration. You can't just stop mid-sentence like that. That's torture. He chased after him, guessing wildly. Wait, did you remember you were some big shot? Or maybe you remembered an enemy, right? Am I close? Seeing how curious Yuki was, Xiangshan sighed and gave in just a little. Tell me, have you ever heard the name Xiangshan? To his surprise, Yuki simply shook his head. Nope, doesn't ring a bell. Xiangshan blinked in disbelief. What? That name was given to me by my grandfather himself. It was supposed to shake the world. He muttered to himself, his voice faint. Has the age of heroes already passed? Just how long have I been asleep? Still clinging to hope, Xiangshan pressed on. What about similar names? Something like the mountain no one crosses? Yuki shook his head again. Nope, nothing like that. That answer hit Xiangshan like a hammer. I used to be famous. The whole world knew who I was. Yuki looked at him skeptically. What were you? Like a Paralympic champion or something? Xiangshan let out a bitter laugh. I don't know. I really don't remember anything. My declarative memory must have been offloaded somewhere. All I remember is my name. And his. Suddenly, he grabbed Yuki's shoulders. Do you remember the name I shouted when I first woke up? Yimov? Yuki furrowed his brow, thinking hard. Yeah, you did say that name when you first woke up. But from the look on Xiangshan's face, that wasn't the answer he wanted. He muttered to himself. So even he's gone? Have I really been asleep for thousands of years? I can't even remember who I was. Finally, he turned to Yuki and asked, Hey, what year is it right now? Yuki blinked. This year? It's 2009. Yuki explained. There was a war during the Third Era. They called it the Ascension War. Xiangshan's eyes widened. That war. So I've really been asleep for 200 years. And if I'm still alive, then the real Yorg must be too. I have to uncover the truth. That night, Yuki brought Xiangshan to visit a local doctor named Schultz. Xiangshan hoped to upgrade to a more functional, combat-ready prosthetic body, but he lacked the parts. Dr. Schultz frowned. How about some high-grade components? Yes, but nothing comes free. Xiangshan nodded, understanding the hesitation. Then he reached into his bag and pulled something out. It was a segment of spine salvaged from the dog he had defeated. The truth was, that dog had once been human, until it was modified with injected viral strands and fused with advanced gene-binding tech. Beings like that were known as cyberends. Just like what happened to Yuki's mother, Xiangshan said. She ended up that way because she sold her spine. Are you seriously thinking of selling it? Yuki asked softly. You're not going to use it for yourself? There's no medicine, Xiangshan replied. You know the stuff they use when replacing a spine? What was it called again? The doctor raised an eyebrow. You mean reverse courier soak? Xiangshan snapped his fingers. That's the one. So it's still called that in this era. But the drug wasn't the only thing he needed. He also required a ton of compatible parts. The doctor frowned. Those components you mentioned, way too ancient. Try checking the scrap pile at the parts yard. Or maybe look up some blueprints online. Xiangshan stared at him, stunned. Wait, the internet? That died out during the war. You're telling me this wrecked world still has net access? Though clearly intrigued, he eventually declined. Forget it. Private network fees are a ripoff. After Xiangshan left, the doctor crept into a hidden room and whispered into a transmitter. Mission failed. Xiangshan refused to go online no matter what I said. On the other end of the line, the mayor appeared on screen, his tone grave. Violation of Dyson Principle Article 3. Collusion between a Shaka and an outsider is punishable by death. That Xiangshan, there's no doubt he's one of them. In his youth, the mayor had offended a powerful official and was forced into exile. The doctor knew the surface story, but the truth was that the official had been assassinated by a Shaka the mayor himself had summoned. It was a lesson passed down from his father. Shaka are easy to manipulate. Just show them deference, and they'll never raise a hand against you. That principle became the cornerstone of the mayor's survival philosophy. He had hoped to keep it buried forever. But this time, the tax officer only took 18 babies, below the quota. That could mean the forest rebels, the outlawed Shaka clans, were watching. And Xiangshan's refusal to go online? That behavior mirrored the Shaka perfectly. They never connected to networks because the moment they did, their true identities would be exposed. After witnessing Mr. Shan's explosive strength during the dogfight, especially after acquiring the martial artist's cybernetic body, the mayor finally came to a realization. If we want this town to survive, we may have no choice but to rely on a Shaka. Meanwhile, Xiangshan and Yuki arrived at the town's abandoned parts depot. As they scavenged through piles of scrap, their conversation naturally circled back to the battle that day. Xiangshan admitted, "Honestly, I didn't plan to step up. Someone pushed me out there, which means someone was trying to get me killed." Yuki was stunned. He'd been there, but hadn't seen anything suspicious. Realizing time was short, Xiangshan suggested, "You should head back. I'll handle this alone." But Yuki shook his head without hesitation. "You saved my life today. I'm coming with you." Together, they climbed to the highest peak, closest to the moon, wind whipping around them. Something dangerous was brewing in the silence. Xiangshan stared at the strange scar across the moon's surface, his mind swirling with doubt. Have I really slept for 200 years? Or did I somehow cross into a parallel world? Without another word, he led Yuki to a grand, rust-covered ruin. What looked like a pile of scrap was actually a marvel of ancient design, the legendary Turing machine. Pointing at the wreckage, Xiangshan explained, "The Turing machine was the first computer, born at the dawn of civilization. It wasn't just the start of technology, it was the true origin of all inner force. External martial arts came from battlefield tactics, but inner force. That's the fusion of intelligence and will. Every internal technique is essentially a form of computation, and all computation traces back to this structure." Yuki was stunned, though still confused. "Wait, what does a computer have to do with fighting?" Xiangshan smiled. "A computer can run billions of simulations in a blink. The true masters use that power through their own bodies." He kept going, explaining concept after concept. Yuki couldn't keep up, but he could feel it. Something ancient and powerful was waking up. Xiangshan went on, "The human brain is intuitive. It struggles to model complex computation. But machines, they were made for it. That's the essence of inner force. When you can command a Turing machine, no one can steal your data or hijack your thoughts. Train your fists without training your core, and all you'll ever be is someone else's tool." Yuki still looked completely lost. Xiangshan broke it down. "If you only focus on external techniques and ignore inner cultivation, you're basically walking around naked in the data world. Anyone could rip your memories or steal your combat instincts. Even the strongest fighter is nothing more than a puppet unless they master inner power. Only then can you own yourself. This is your first lesson. Someday, when you're trapped in an illusion, this might be the only thing that saves you." With that, Xiangshan guided Yuki's hands over the machine's controls. The gears let out a loud clunk, clunk, then suddenly jammed with a sharp metallic screech. Yuki jumped back in fright, nearly yanking his hand away, but Xiangshan reassured him. This is good. It means the world is still real, the machine still works, and we're not just ghosts inside some simulation. This phenomenon is called a Turing halt, the sword that cuts through illusion. Yuki raised his hand, confused. What's a Turing halt? Xiangshan explained, it's the idea of whether one Turing machine can determine if another will ever stop. That jam just now, it proves we're not inside a simulated computation. That little glitch was the strongest denial of a false reality. In that moment, Xiangshan was certain he wasn't just a brain in a vat. The texture of the world became vivid again. He could even feel the seed of inner power beginning to take root within him. Gently, he patted Yuki on the head. Thank the stars we're real. But then his tone turned serious. To walk the path of a true warrior, understanding the Turing machine isn't enough. You must envision it, reshape its ancient logic in your mind, and wield it with your will. What they needed wasn't just rusted machinery. If they grasped the blueprint behind it, they could build the core of their inner strength. Xiangshan had explained a lot, but it was clear Yuki hadn't understood most of it. The night had fallen. It was time to head back. But Yuki wasn't ready to let go. He grabbed Xiangshan's arm. Wait, can we talk more about the path of the warrior? Xiangshan replied calmly. What I just taught you could last a lifetime. Yuki may not have learned any techniques, but one thing he now knew for sure. This man wasn't just Xiangshan. He was a true Xia. Xiangshan turned to leave. Yuki hesitated for a long moment, then suddenly shouted, I want to be a Xia too. They look so cool and so powerful. Xiangshan sighed, half amused. Cool? That's just flair. Real Xia get beat up more than you think. But Yuki didn't flinch. I don't care. If I become strong, I can make life better for me and my mom. Even so, Xiangshan wasn't moved. He patted the kid's shoulder. Forget it, kid. Go home and get some sleep. Being a Xia isn't as noble as it sounds. There are plenty among them who are disloyal, heartless, or selfish. And once you become one, you'll carry a stain in the eyes of the authorities for life. But Yuki didn't care. He plugged his ears and shouted, I don't care! I still want to be one! He couldn't even explain why. Maybe it was something about Xiangshan's passionate speech. It lit a fire in his chest. Xiangshan had warned that lacking inner power could lead to dangerous anomalies, but Yuki felt just fine. That defiant spirit caught Xiangshan off guard. Maybe the kid really is worth teaching. All right then, sit down. I'll teach you what a true Xia needs to know. First, his mind stirred. Memories long buried began to awaken. Maybe passing down a few things to this stubborn brat wasn't such a bad idea. So, he began with the curse of knowledge. Sometimes, in a life of ignorance and peace, not knowing your own suffering might be a form of happiness. It's like chasing after the light, yet always being trapped in a darkness you can't escape. Yuki was completely lost. Why did everything Xiangshan said today sound so cryptic and hard to understand? But deep down, he trusted Xiangshan. He too wanted to live a life that was easy, comfortable, and free. When he mentioned the word freedom, Xiangshan nodded. That's it. This kid had the soul of a Xia, because at its core, being a Xia means fighting for freedom. But don't get me wrong, Xiangshan added. Freedom doesn't mean doing whatever you want. Some Xia may fight for themselves, but most fight for the freedom of others. Since ancient times, it's always seemed natural for the strong to prey on the weak, but that's a dangerous misconception. This so-called law of the jungle is nothing but a betrayal of humanity's shared ideals, leaving the vulnerable in constant fear. But one day, a remarkable man stood up. His name was Mozi. He introduced the concept of mutual benefit, an idea that was incredibly rare at the time. This is the true power behind legalism. Just like in Buddhism, where one must first cultivate the heart, most people don't naturally want to break the law or defy order. But the truth is, laws rarely protect the people. They protect wealth and the ruling class. The real beneficiaries of any system are always the elite, perched at the top of the pyramid. Suddenly, Xiangshan trembled. It was as if another buried memory had surged back. Throughout human history, the strong have trampled the weak. It's always been seen as just the way things are. In today's terms, they call it high-spec units exploiting low-spec ones. But whenever things reach that breaking point, there's always a spark. A few will rise and form a force of resistance. In that sense, Jia are the underdogs of society, but they're also its most dangerous rebels. Yuki listened in silence, and for the first time, something in his eyes shifted. He was starting to understand. In truth, not all Jia are saints or villains. Though powerful as individuals, their true enemies are often entire systems of power and profit. That's why, throughout history and across civilizations, most rebellions end in failure. The true essence of martial arts is assassination, giving the weak a chance to strike the strong with minimal cost. But in the end, martial arts are just tools. They can serve the just or empower the corrupt. Tyranny, after all, is just a few hoarding power and resources to oppress the many. Remove the few, and the tyranny falls. Xiangshan turned slowly to Yuki. External martial arts. They're essentially assassination techniques. And what truly fits cybernetic bodies isn't ancient martial arts, but something born from early Western firearms tactics. This new form of assassination blends guerrilla warfare, sniping, and special ops theory into one lethal style. And thanks to the limitless potential of cyber bodies, it's evolved beyond human imagination. In the end, martial arts are just algorithms. External styles are templates. Internal arts are data. At last, Xiangshan passed down his entire philosophy about Xia, inner strength, and Turing theory to Yuki, demanding he start with internal training. Then, with hands clasped behind his back, he solemnly declared, "From this day forward, I am your master." Yuki blinked in confusion. "Master? Is that something you eat?" Xiangshan nearly fell over. "Master means a sacred pact between Xia, not a snack." The next morning, while Xiangshan was busy tinkering with his new cyber body, the mayor decided to drop by. He'd clearly heard about the parts purchase and strutted in like a seasoned expert, offering unsolicited advice. But this time, Xiangshan wasn't the clueless Yorg he used to be. If the mayor knew he was a Xia and still tried to cozy up, there had to be an ulterior motive. Still, it didn't really matter. He was in such a ruined state, who would bother scheming against him? Right now, what mattered most was finding a solid, battle-ready outer shell and a skull cap that fit like a glove. With half his brain exposed, getting into a fight like this was asking to get it scooped out like melon flesh. Suddenly, the mayor remembered there was an unused 3D furnace in town that might help Xiangshan. He yanked him over with enthusiasm. "No need to discuss payment. Just take it as a thank you from us." That made Xiangshan instantly wary. He wasn't the type to believe in free lunches. Sure enough, the truth came out. In just half a month, the welfare officer would be visiting town. Subsidies were tied directly to tax quotas, and this time they were supposed to hand over 19 babies, but only 18 were delivered. That missing one could cost them everything. If the higher-ups withdrew their protection, savage raiders from the wasteland could swarm in unchecked. With palms pressed together in a plea, the mayor begged, "If the raiders do come, please, help us hold the line." Xiangshan was speechless. So this was the real price behind their generosity. He worked late into the night, finally making some headway. Staring at Will's canine-shaped cyber body, he fell into deep thought. "I need to break this down fast and turn it into something I can actually use." He quickly realized that the synthetic muscle fibers in this cyber body could be dismantled individually, and the embedded chips were capable of powering separate body functions on their own. What thrilled him even more was the power core, far more advanced than his old rusted battery. At the very least, endurance wouldn't be an issue anymore. But what really shocked him was this. The mangy cyber dog actually had a built-in internal combustion engine. He dipped a finger into the liquid dripping onto the floor and rubbed it lightly. A blue flame suddenly ignited on his fingertip. It was ethanol fuel. A hybrid energy system? Seriously? These were the only usable parts for now. and he still wasn't sure how far he could push the modifications. First things first, he had to deal with the control chip. But as soon as he connected it to his neural system, a glaring issue popped up. The data inside the chip was a mess. In an age of such advanced tech, the core programs were still written in plain old C language. The drivers weren't just outdated, they lacked even basic encapsulation. It was like a martial artist with perfect form on the outside, but a hollow shell within, forever stuck at the same level. After a moment of thought, he had no choice but to rely on the programming knowledge still lingering in his brain to rewrite the chip from scratch. Meanwhile, Yuki had already wandered off. Whatever his master was working on, it was way beyond his comprehension. Ever since he started calling Xiangshan master, the local bullies began avoiding him. After all, no one wanted to mess with a guy who knocked out a trained warrior. But as he strolled through town, a towering figure suddenly stepped into his path. The man grabbed Yuki by the collar, his grip firm and threatening. Yet a second later, something seemed to flash across the man's mind, and he abruptly let go. This man was one of Inua's men, the same thug who had forced Xiangshan into the arena. That entire setup had been his doing. Back at the workshop, Xiangshan was still deep in his code, racing against time to reprogram the chip. He merged advanced math with raw coding logic, then fed in the core of his inner force, what he called thinking language. All the data, once scattered, now fused into a unified system. And from it emerged something brand new, a cybernetic martial arts doctrine. To prevent his thinking language from being deciphered, Xiangshan restructured the program using a far more advanced algorithmic method. After 72 grueling hours, he finally completed the rewrite. In the process, he unlocked even deeper layers of knowledge. This one-of-a-kind coding language might very well be the most complex system in existence, and for a true martial hacker, it was the sharpest blade of all. Meanwhile, high on a dopamine rush, Enoch swaggered leisurely back into town. Under the Dyson principle, most addictive substances were strictly banned, but compounds like high testosterone, which got you high without causing addiction, were still widely available. These days, it was common for people to get a post-battle or post-game injection, a quick way to loosen up and feel like gravity didn't apply. Enoch still remembered his first shot. For a moment, it felt like his human body and his manhood were finally restored, but just as he was floating in bliss, a shadow dropped from above. A barbed hook shot out, latching tightly onto his motorbike's tire. The figure stepped forward, leather jacket, steel boots, and a glare that screamed trouble. It was none other than Rafe, the notorious wasteland outlaw and core member of the Z Syndicate. Enoch froze. He knew better than to provoke a reaper like this. In a trembling voice, he asked, "Sir, what can I do for you?" But the man just laughed. "Heard your little town birthed a real tough guy. Took down the tax officer's personal warrior, didn't he?" Enoch's face twisted with rage. Without a word, he revved his engine and charged straight at Rafe. But Rafe didn't even flinch. With a casual swing, he blew out Enoch's front tire on the spot. The noise jolted Vil awake. He stumbled out, rubbing his eyes. "What the hell is going on?" Rafe didn't bother with small talk. One clean shot, and Vil's skull burst like a melon. Enoch stood frozen in place, drenched in cold sweat, unable to even speak. Turns out, since the town failed to meet its tax quota, the Lord had revoked its monthly protection. And Rafe? He was just the first hyena to smell blood. Enoch, completely terrified, spilled everything he knew about Xiangshan. Rafe raised an eyebrow. "Beat Will after losing all his martial algorithms, huh? Now that's interesting." Meanwhile, the tax officer stared at the terminal in front of him. On the screen was a full dossier on Rafe. He had known Rafe's every move and intention, yet chose to remain silent, even knowing the man was a notorious wasteland thug. As a robot, he held no illusions about humans. In his eyes, they weren't even capable of creating true artificial intelligence, just artificial stupidity. Anything a computer could do, humans could eventually reproduce themselves with enough time and effort. Yuki, hearing Xiangshan relay this, looked skeptical. "But in chess, machines already beat the best human players, right?" Xiangshan just smiled. Sure, the machine plays chess, but it has no idea why it plays. Computers can mimic, but they'll never exceed the human mind. With that, he casually picked up a metal rod. He knelt down and drew letters in the dirt. Lesson 1. Boolean logic. Take any two values. They could be numbers, letters, whatever. 1 gives rise to 2, 2 leads to 3. Every piece of modern computing starts from here. In other words, even drawing in the dirt with a metal rod could achieve the same result. Computers simply replace the human hand. Boolean logic breaks down human understanding into formats a machine can execute. And the ultimate masters of internal strength, inner power, aim to encode their insights into computers, unlocking the machine's full potential. Mathematics is the Tao. Boolean logic is the rule of numbers. From the Tao comes 1, from 1 comes 2. This progression is the essence of inner strength. Yuki, listening to all this philosophical rambling, looked completely lost. Not a single word made sense. And to make things worse, Shangshan actually assigned him homework. As night fell, after days of meticulous adjustments, Shangshan had finally completed the prototype of his new cyber body, assembled from the parts of Will's old frame. He called Yuki over and, without a word, carefully removed the chip from the boy's brain. Sure enough, in this world, the system never allows the weak to rise. Yuki's chip had 0 firewall protections and was riddled with bugs and exploitable backdoors. Shangshan began by reinforcing Yuki's chip with a firewall to block any potential surveillance. Then, he ran another deep scan for lingering bugs. Sure enough, Yuki's cyber body moved far more fluidly than before. With this chip, he could finally set himself apart from the average human. Once that was done, Shangshan threw himself back into crafting his own custom chip. He had considered refusing the mayor's request, but deep down, he knew if he turned a blind eye this time, he might lose the very reason he became who he was. Running is always the safest option when facing overwhelming odds, but martial arts were never meant for running. They were created to protect the weak. Holding up the finished chip, he said, "Install this into my bio-brain. With it, I can finally reclaim who I used to be." The moment it was connected, Shangshan's cybernetic body jolted, immediately initiating a full diagnostic scan. As he looked at the pile of alloy armor the mayor had delivered, Shangshan finally understood just how fragile his current body truly was. Before the welfare officer arrives, he must acquire a pair of hands strong enough to rival a real martial artist's. Meanwhile, Inua had already slipped quietly back into town. Shockingly, Inua stood before the town's people and lied, claiming that Ville's death was Shangshan's fault for refusing to sell that cybernetic dog body. But before he could finish, the mayor pulled the trigger without hesitation. "Without Shangshan, we couldn't even pay our taxes." In that moment, the mayor showed rare backbone. To protect the town, he had already spent a fortune hiring 3 martial artists from outside, because today was the welfare officer's inspection day. Just then, a thunderous roar echoed from above. A massive aircraft descended slowly onto the outskirts of the town. From within stepped a towering figure clad in a single-eyed metal helmet, his presence cold and oppressive, like an upright steel drum. One by one, rows of infant strollers were wheeled out after him. This was the year's welfare package. Any household wishing to adopt could walk up and claim one on the spot. Pick a child and take them home. But the mayor didn't relax because the most critical announcement hadn't yet come, whether the town would retain its protection status. And just like that, the one-eyed man turned and began to leave. The mayor stepped forward, wanting to speak, but no words came out. To everyone's surprise, the man turned back and glanced at the old mayor. "Haven't you already set everything up? Do I really need to say more?" With that, he walked off. On his own, 19 days from now, I'll officially declare the town under protection. Until then, those 3 warriors are your best bet. But no sooner had the welfare officer's plane lifted off than chaos erupted. A thug came charging onto the square like a man possessed, like he was afraid someone might beat him to the prize. The 3 warriors immediately went on high alert, their black robes fluttering. Anthony took the lead, hoisting a massive Gatling gun and firing without hesitation. But shockingly, the thug began to spin in place, forming a tornado-like vortex that deflected every bullet effortlessly. Then, bam! A piercing beam of light shot forth, cleanly blowing a hole through Anthony's skull. Instant kill. The attacker was none other than Liu, the infamous wasteland marauder. Anthony had once single-handedly wiped out 30 raiders, and now he'd been one-shotted. The remaining 2 warriors were stunned, but pride wouldn't allow them to retreat. With a burst of movement, they dove into the fray. Lanconi was the first to strike, swinging his dual scythes with deadly speed. Sparks flew as the blades clashed against Liu's steel rod, the sound sharp and explosive. Lanconi thought he had the upper hand, slashing with deadly precision, but what he didn't realize was that Liu hadn't even used 10% of his true power. Seeing the fight drag on, the last warrior, Ballas, couldn't hold back any longer. With a roar, he surged forward with all his strength. But even someone as brute force as Ballas found himself unable to take a single step closer to Liu. He launched a flurry of punches like a hurricane, but Liu remained unfazed, dodging, weaving, and deflecting with ease. Then, seizing an opening, Liu swung his rod at Ballas. But just when it looked like he would strike true, he suddenly reversed direction and smashed it straight at Lanconi. Caught completely off guard, Lanconi had no choice but to brace for impact. With a sickening crack, his entire arm was sent flying, blood spraying through the air. Furious and desperate, the 2 warriors decided to unleash their strongest combined attack. But just as they began to move, both froze mid-action. Their faces went pale, as if bewitched. Countless voices echoed through their minds, twisting their thoughts and breaking their focus. Only then did they realize Liu had mastered the legendary vision technique, a true internal arts master who could crush any external fighter with just a single glance. Hollis's eyes widened. Episode 2. He recognized that move. It was the same technique used in a massacre years ago. Back then, a wandering martial artist had been exposed, drawing hundreds of fighters to challenge him. But the man didn't even lift a finger. He simply glanced at them, and just like that, the entire mob turned on each other, slaughtering their own allies like madmen. Seeing the flicker of recognition in Paulus's eyes, Leaf chuckled. Didn't expect anyone in this dusty town to know that technique. Don't stare into my cyber eye, he added casually. The moment Lanconi made eye contact, it was already too late. Most martial fighters rely on infrared vision during combat to scan for hidden threats, but Leaf had hijacked that signal to infiltrate Lanconi's system. Regular hackers might take minutes to breach such defenses, but for someone trained in inner power, it takes less than 1/100th of a second. With a fist sync interrupted, even a lightning-fast reboot wouldn't save him. One forced shutdown of the combat protocol and a fatal moment of days would follow. The fact that Leaf could instantly take down a ranged combatant like Anthony made one thing clear. His eyewitness technique wasn't just for show. He raised his hand for the final strike against Paulus, then froze mid-motion. Turns out, Leaf hadn't been fighting alone. His teammate, Boomquake, had linked to his nervous system via Wi-Fi, sharing access to the eyewitness protocol. It was Boomquake who held him back, because Paulus's external martial skills were too valuable to waste. In a world of brawlers, the tank-class fighter was a rare gem. Paulus misunderstood, thinking they decided to spare him. He quickly put on a flattering smile, trying to slip away. But instead, Leaf offered him a deal. With his life hanging by a thread, Paulus made his choice and pledged allegiance. To show goodwill, Leaf even deactivated the eyewitness connection. Betrayal wasn't a concern because in this gang, loyalty was forged through shared memories. Their bond wasn't built on trust or honor. It thrived on looting, bloodshed, and wild indulgence. This chaotic freedom, even top-tier martial artists struggled to resist its pull. But Paulus was never their true target. They had come for someone far more dangerous, a man who could take down trained warriors. Xiang Shan. To the untrained eye, he might seem unremarkable, but anyone who beat Will in a fair fight was someone worth recruiting. Suddenly, Anthony, on the brink of death, jerked upright in a desperate final spasm. Leaf didn't hesitate. One clean strike, no second chances. The town mayor lunged in rage, but before he could land a blow, he was cut down instantly. At that moment, Boomquake's sensors picked up movement. Ulia was fleeing the town with Yuki. Leaf narrowed his eyes, then bolted in pursuit. Yuki's right leg had been blown off, blood pooling beneath him. Ulia frantically tried to lift him up, urging him to repair his cyber leg. But she never noticed Leaf was already closing in from the shadows. Desperate, Ulia even offered her brain fluid data in exchange for mercy. But Leaf seized Yuki by the collar and growled, "Tell me about that man you dragged out of the junk heap." It was only then Yuki realized this wasn't about them. They were after his master. Leaf's grin widened with excitement. Anyone referred to as master in this era was no ordinary survivor. Capturing such a figure alive, that was a rare and valuable prize. Moments later, Yuki was hoisted up by a staff, paraded through the streets, a living bait to lure out the elusive Shangshan. The townsfolk watched in silent fury, afraid to act as Yuki was paraded like a trophy. Then, suddenly, Enoch stepped out from the crowd. Yuki lashed out at him, screaming that his betrayal had led to his mother's death. Only then did Enoch realize the weight of his actions, but by now, his courage had already fled. Meanwhile, deep inside a derelict warehouse, Shangshan was undergoing his final transformation. He was merging with Will's chip, absorbing its memories to inherit a master-level combat system. Outside, Leaf had arrived. After scanning for heat signatures, he smirked and began shouting insults to provoke a reaction. And then, boom! A thunderous stomp shook the earth. Clad in martial armor, Shangshan burst forth like lightning, rescuing the dying Yuki in one swift move. As he looked down at his disciple, who had endured unbearable pain just to protect him, rage filled his eyes. He turned coldly to Leaf. "You." The Silver Drive Shaft Leaf, successor of the SSC Triple Fusion staff. With the memories from Will's chip flooding his mind, Shangshan exposed Leaf's dirty past, losing at the Paragames, then beating his opponent to death with a staff just to hide his shame. After being expelled from his sect, Leaf didn't just walk away. He wiped out every last fellow disciple, even those who once called him brother. Shangshan sneered. "You call yourself a martial artist? You're nothing but a thug hiding behind a title." Leaf scoffed. "Please. If a fighter doesn't use power to dominate, what's the point of training at all? Your whole weak beat strong fairy tale is ancient history. In this world, strength is the only truth. The weak don't survive. They disappear." Then, instead of striking, Leaf shifted gears. "Look, I know you were part of the old school sects, but let's be honest. They're irrelevant now. Join us in the Green Path Brotherhood. No dogma, no rules, just raw freedom." Shangshan blinked, caught slightly off guard by the proposal. In his mind, the fall of tyranny should have ended the era of mercenaries and assassins. But now, someone had rebranded lawlessness and even gave it a fancy name like Green Path. Not that it mattered. He had no interest in walking the same path as scum. He simply stared him down and asked, "Is that how you recruit people? Offer freedom with one hand and hold a knife in the other?" Leaf didn't get angry. He had never expected a yes. He'd come here to fight. Planting a staff firmly before him, he smirked. "Great sword technique. Let's open with a kill." Shangshan's gaze sharpened. With Will's memory chip now part of him, he knew just how lethal that style was. At this level, a staff swing carried the weight of a blade. One hit could split him in two. His mind raced, calculating every possible move Leaf might make. Physically, he was outmatched. And worse, he could sense the lingering threat of that bizarre eyewitness technique in Leaf's body. As Shangshan processed the variables, Boomquake suddenly lunged in, launching a preemptive strike. A beam of infrared light shot straight into Shangshan's left eye. Boomquake smirked, certain the control link had been established. But nothing happened. No twitch, no stutter, like the signal hit a wall. Boomquake froze. "What the? Is that a firewall?" But there's no trace of interception. A chill ran down his spine. Could such an advanced inner technique really exist? So refined it leaves no digital footprint? But for Shangshan, the infrared assault wasn't entirely useless. That sudden jolt of foreign code stirred something deep inside him. A woman's image slowly emerged in his mind, soft and elusive, yet unforgettable. She had once looked at him with a gentle smile and said, "Let me teach you 3 techniques. If you master them, you'll never be caught off guard again." True martial mastery lies not in brute strength, but in attacking and retreating without leaving a single trace. These are what some call the Dragon Slayer trio. First move, scan your internal systems for any anomalies. Second move, hijack and scramble foreign code, then repackage and return it. Third move, erase every trace of your digital presence, so clean they won't even know you were there. They sounded simple, but each contained a level of insight far beyond raw technology. At that very moment, Leaf's expression shifted. Something felt wrong with his cyber eye. Leaf suddenly realized his vision had gone haywire. At the exact moment Xiangshan received his eyewitness technique, he had covertly bounced several high-frequency QR codes back into Leaf's cyber eye via infrared signal. Those few hidden codes were enough to crash Leaf's entire visual system. Worse still, Boomquake's malicious code, initially injected into Xiangshan, had been rerouted through Leaf's own body and sent right back into Boomquake's core. The so-called Eyewitness Protection Protocol, useless in the face of a true code master. Boomquake finally realized the danger. He sent a rushed alert. "Inua, if this drags on, we're toast." But it was already too late. Every command he'd sent had been hijacked, rewritten, and turned against them. And he didn't have the skills to undo it. In just 3 minutes, rising internal temperatures would overheat their systems, melting circuits, frying processors, burning their bodies from within. Their only chance was to take down Xiangshan immediately and retreat for emergency support. Leaf made his move. No more hesitation. He launched himself forward like a human missile, fists clenched, eyes locked on the target. But Xiangshan wasn't the kind to wait around and die. As Leaf charged in with lethal force, he leaped to the side, narrowly evading the blow. In midair, he twisted, flipped, and shifted direction, eyes locked on Leaf, scanning for any gap in his defense. But Leaf wasn't some brute swinging wildly. His external power was solid. That staff of his never stopped moving, striking at every point Xiangshan could possibly land. Then, an opening. As the staff smashed into the ground, Xiangshan lunged and grabbed the tail end. Leaf reacted instantly, yanking both the staff and his own body upward, trying to fling him off. But Xiangshan held on like a vice. The difference in body weight between their cybernetics was massive. For a moment, Xiangshan couldn't even counterattack. The flurry of strikes from Leaf grew more intense until Xiangshan could barely hold on. Just before a crushing blow landed, he twisted free and flipped onto a nearby rooftop, narrowly avoiding serious injury. But as he landed, a cold jolt ran through him. His right arm had gone numb. It must have been damaged during that earlier impact. Something in the internal dampeners had failed. Leaf's pupils narrowed. He had locked on like a hawk spotting its prey. His staff ripped through the air, a black flash swinging in for the kill. Xiangshan rolled aside just in time. He couldn't fight back. He could only run. Leaf had him beat in raw strength, matched his speed, and could easily crush him if he took a single hit. But then, Xiangshan skidded to a halt. He planted his feet and stared Leaf down. The window he'd been waiting for had finally opened. As the staff came crashing down, Xiangshan didn't dodge. He jumped straight into the air, right at his enemy. He'd started to see the pattern. Every swing, every move. Leaf was fast but predictable. In the end, martial arts was just assassination dressed up with discipline. If you couldn't kill in one strike, your muscles meant nothing. The only way to beat someone stronger: keep moving, dodge everything, wait for the crack, and then hit it hard enough they don't get back up. Xiangshan zipped across the battlefield like a shadow. Every time that staff came inches from his face, he bent, twisted, or flipped out of danger by the thinnest margin. While dodging, Xiangshan analyzed the staff movements. He'd never seen this SSC triple fusion staff before, probably a technique developed while he was in stasis. Still, danger-wise, this fight wasn't half as intense as the one he had with Will. Back then, Will might have been weaker, but Xiangshan's body was basically scrap metal held together with bolts. If Will's cyber body was a solid 100, Leaf's setup had to be pushing 300. And back then, Xiang Shan's own rig was barely a 1. Now, the difference wasn't that insane, just a few multipliers apart. But when it came to combat technique, Leaf's might score a 100. Xiang Shan's? His internal and external styles were a league beyond. Try 1,000, maybe 10,000. He glanced at Leaf and muttered, if he actually understood this hardware, he'd be gripping the staff from the middle and using split-range attacks. But now, it was too late. Leaf's inner system was compromised, and the commands he'd issued couldn't be undone. That's when Leaf finally realized this wasn't some desperate survivor. This guy was a monster in disguise. Leaf actually took a step back. His first instinct, run. But before he could even pivot, Paulus and Boomquake arrived at the scene. Neither of them really wanted to get involved, but unfortunately Boomquake had already planted control code in their systems. Their bodies moved whether they liked it or not. Xiang Shan was now stuck in a 3-on-1 deathmatch. Leaf made up his mind. Forget honor. He'd let the others do the dirty work and strike when it was safe. Worst case, if things went south, he could bail at any time. Paulus glanced at Xiang Shan. The guy looked like a pile of junk bolts, and yet he'd held his own against Leaf. That was impressive. For a split second, he actually considered teaming up. Maybe, just maybe, they could take Leaf down. But then, Beezy's tea. A surge of code flooded his brain, wiping that thought clean. His expression blanked. Without a word, he swung his fist, tearing through the air straight at Xiang Shan. Leaf didn't waste a second. He raised his staff, gripped the middle with both hands, and unleashed his deadliest move. The ends of the weapon began to vibrate violently, cracking the air itself with sonic shockwaves. In one swift motion, he spun the staff overhead, turning it into a black cyclone of death. He could only maintain this for 3 seconds, but right now, that was all he needed. Xiang Shan felt it instantly. This wasn't something he could take lightly. His instincts screamed at him to stay sharp. Leaf locked in on both targets and launched a signature move called the Phoenix Triple Strike. Xiang Shan braced himself for a direct hit, but at the last second, Leaf changed direction mid-attack, and before he could recover, Paulus's fist came flying in from the front. These crude, brute force attacks. Xiang Shan had seen 1,000 just like them. He already knew the next move before Paulus even threw it. Xiang Shan caught Paulus's fist mid-swing, twisted with the momentum, and dodged Leaf's incoming staff by inches. Before Paulus could even react, Xiang Shan launched a brutal kick right to the skull. Crack. Game over. Rule number 1 in a 2-on-1 fight. Drop the weak one first. Xiang Shan didn't hesitate. One clean hit, one less problem. Leaf saw his teammate go down in a flash and, without a second thought, tossed his weapon and bolted like a track star. Xiang Shan blinked. Damn, that guy runs faster than he fights. But before he could finish the thought, bang! A truck exploded out of a nearby building, tearing through the wall. Ulia was behind the wheel, shouting at the top of her lungs, "Get back here, you coward!" With a wild drift, she whipped the truck around and floored it straight toward Leaf. Tires screeched, steel crunched. She rammed him hard, smashing through not 1, not 2, but 3 entire buildings. Leaf tumbled off the hood in a cloud of dust, face twisted in rage. "You psycho! I'll send you flying!" Just as Leaf wound up to strike, Xiang Shan dropped from above, slamming him mid-motion like a hammer from the sky. That was the final straw. Leaf snapped. Rage boiling over, he lunged, trying to drag Xiang Shan down with him in a last-ditch death grip. But Xiang Shan saw it coming. He slipped to the side, smooth as water. Using the momentum, he redirected the force, sending it right back into Leaf's chest. Inside, Leaf's CPU flashed red. His system was overheating, on the brink of meltdown. He collapsed, defeated, body twitching, eyes burning with helpless rage. From the shadows, Boomquake finally stepped into the open. No more hiding. Xiang Shan didn't wait. He launched forward like a missile, zero hesitation. In the blink of an eye, he landed right in front of Boomquake, blocking his path, eyes locked. Boomquake froze. He knew the second he showed up, he'd basically volunteered to die. In a panic, he turned sideways, revealing a built-in cannon on his torso, ready to fight back. But Xiang Shan was already moving, a low slide straight toward him, knocking him clean off his feet with a brutal kick. Without wasting a breath, Xiangshan turned and charged straight at the downed Leaf. Leaf knew this was it. No escape, no backup. But instead of fear, he gave one final twisted smile, showing his true face. Xiangshan closed the gap, launched into the air with explosive power, and in one swift motion, delivered a spinning kick that sent Leaf's head flying. Boomquake watched it happen. His partner, his last line of defense, was dead. His hope collapsed. Instinct kicked in. Run! Run now or die! But he barely made it a few steps before his body lit up in flames. The kill switch had activated. Turns out, that delayed detonation inside Boomquake? That was Xiangshan's little surprise, set long before the fight even began. Now only one person remained on the battlefield, Paulus's clueless little teammate. The guy just stood there, dazed. How could someone so small wipe out an entire squad? It had to be some kind of game, right? He blinked, and in that blink, Xiangshan moved. One punch, lights out. The guy hit the ground like a rag doll. That's when the mayor finally arrived, panting and wide-eyed. He raised a hand to stop Xiangshan, but he was far too late. The poor guy's head was already a crater, no saving that one. The mayor stared, frozen, then collapsed from shock, out cold on the ground. But just as Xiangshan turned to leave, his instincts flared. Something was off. Normally, when a hero takes down a gang of criminals, the crowd cheers, right? But here, all Xiangshan saw were eyes filled with unease. They stared at him not with awe, but with fear, as if they couldn't celebrate the death of their oppressors because now their so-called savior felt just as terrifying. Xiangshan had won, yes, but his body had taken heavy damage. A nearby doctor whispered, "It's not that they hate you. It's the brain kill. What you did violates the Dyson principle." As he spoke, a scythe-armed prosthetic was surgically fitted into Xiangshan's shoulder socket. Xiangshan just smirked. The Dyson principle. Nothing but a punchline to the powerful. The strong have the freedom to destroy the weak, but the weak are shackled by rules that forbid resistance. This era might call itself free, but that freedom is selective, always conditional. And maybe that's why heroes like me never truly vanish. Because the world still needs someone who's willing to cross the line. But then it hit him. There are pieces missing. Memories about the heroes before me. Memories that I might have lost. Yeah, I must have one hell of a backstory, Xiangshan muttered, half joking, half sincere. He flexed his new scythe arm, nodding with approval. Classic mechanical drive fused with artificial muscle fibers. Strength and agility balanced just right. That's when the doctor dropped a bombshell. Enoch had betrayed the town. Worse, he ordered Will to push Xiangshan into that deadly ambush. So he sells me out and thinks he can just walk away? Xiangshan's tone went ice cold. He wasn't about to let that slide. Some might call it revenge, but in a world of vigilantes, justice often came off the record. Yuki was still unconscious, alive, but barely. His heart, kidneys, and liver had all been replaced with synthetic organs. And ever since that happened, Ulia had grown distant, cold, like she couldn't look at Xiangshan the same way. Even after killing Lanconi and freeing the town, the people kept their distance because deep down, no one wants to live next to a man who doesn't need permission to kill. That's when Xiangshan remembered there were still 2 corpses lying outside. He dragged them into the cabin, prepping for a memory extraction. It was time to figure out what this Green Path Brotherhood was really about. From Leaf's memories, Xiangshan uncovered something horrifying. The so-called Green Path Brotherhood was a nightmare machine, pillaging towns, turning men into weaponized machinery, women into high-end dolls, and even children weren't spared. But what chilled him even more, these memories weren't just Leaf's, they were shared. The entire Z organization was plugged into a collective mind. Anyone implanted with this data would slowly rot from within. Like a drug, the thrill of chaos and carnage would root itself deep and bloom bloodshed. In the name of freedom, that's just another lie. Xiangshan clenched his fist, then paused. Was he really any different? Sure, he fought for reasons, but in the end, violence was still violence. Some men are born for peace, others only feel alive when they fight. A voice broke through his spiral. Master! Yuki, half his size, came barreling toward him with eyes full of excitement. Grabbing his arm, he beamed. I finally cracked the whole algorithm set. All of it, no errors. Xiangshan let out a rare, quiet sigh. The kid had talent, real talent. Even without him around, he was growing. But Xiangshan wouldn't choose that path for him. Not the way of a vigilante, especially now. Ulia was still recovering because of him. The townsfolk had seen what he really was. There was no place for him here anymore. When Xiangshan mentioned he was leaving, the room grew quiet. Yuki's eyes lit up. Where are we going? He asked, beaming. Xiangshan shook his head. Not sure yet. First I find Enoch, then track down that so-called brotherhood. What I do know, I can't stay here. Yuki assumed, of course, that he was coming too, but Xiangshan was firm. Not unless your mother agrees. The path of a vigilante. Once you start walking, there's no turning back. Yuki's gaze hardened. If safety means giving up freedom, I'd rather be unsafe. For a moment, Xiangshan just stared at him. In that fire, he saw the echo of a warrior. He finally sighed. All right. If your mother says yes, you're coming with me. Still, he knew this journey wasn't going to be easy. After 2 brutal fights, something had become crystal clear. His missing memories weren't coming back on their own. Only war would wake them. Maybe that's what he'd always been, someone who lived for the next battle, until one day, he lost the wrong fight. I've got no memories, no past, and no idea who I am, who I've lost, or who I'm fighting. This world, it's a nightmare. Violence and blood at every turn. And me? All I can do is fight my way out, one kill at a time. Xiangshan had made up his mind. Green path or royalty, gangs or generals. If you're evil, you're his target. And above them all, the one who built this hell, the so-called father of machines. Sure, he was weak now, but every battle brought new parts, new powers, new tech ripped straight from his enemies. As long as he lived, that day would come. The day he faced the tyrant himself. That's what made him strong. Not his skills, his heart. Even if he forgot who he was, he never forgot why he fought. Funny thing is, the ancient game Super Mario somehow became part of modern martial training. Right now, somewhere across the world, a kid named Anin had his brain jacked into a training rig. On screen, pixelated monsters and flashing fireballs flew at him like bullets. And right there, sticking out of the back of his head, a dusty old label that read, Little Tyrant Learning Console. Yeah, somehow that thing made a comeback. Anin couldn't stop watching Xiangshan's footage. The guy intrigued him, like something ancient wrapped in mystery. He'd originally dumped Will's body there on purpose, bait for raiders, but Xiangshan wiped out the whole plan alone. And now, a phrase bubbled up in his mind, something old school. Jianghu Path. Wait, was Xiangshan actually a trained internal martial artist? He'd missed that completely. Just as the realization hit and the headache kicked in, a raspy, gravel-chewing voice echoed behind him. Standing in the doorway was a beast of a hunting dog, pure muscle. Behind it, none other than Will's uncle, Altus. Altus plopped down with casual menace, his eyes sharp despite the slouch. From the dog's open jaws, a wrinkled human face emerged, smirking. I'm not here for revenge, the old man croaked. I just really hated that kid. Turned out, Xiangshan had dismantled Altus's proudest invention, a hybrid combat style of biomech boxing. The old man never got over it. Right on schedule, today marked the long-awaited return of the town's official protection system. In the past 10 days, thanks to Xiangshan's presence, not a single raider dared step foot near the town. During that time, he had taken his own enhancements to the next level. His cybernetic body was now rebuilt with near-perfect anatomical accuracy. Denser muscle bundles where power was needed, lighter structure where agility mattered. But now that everything was in place, it was time to move on. While in seclusion, he even repurposed the leftover body parts from his fallen enemies into a new invention. Gazing at the bulky contraption, he smirked. Let's call this thing Donkey. And the moment Donkey powered on, the bonding protocol was completed. Meanwhile, the townsfolk were already gathered in the square, eagerly awaiting the arrival of the welfare officer. From the rooftop, Xiangshan stared out over the desolate landscape, then cast one final glance back at the worn-out town. It looked like nothing more than a junkyard, yet as he was about to leave, a strange sense of reluctance crept into his chest. Just then, the mayor arrived with Ulia, stepping in to block Xiangshan's path. He might have spilled blood here, but without him, this town would have been wiped off the map days ago. The mayor handed over a small container. "Yuki asked me to give this to you." Xiangshan opened it and froze. Inside was Yuki's spare chip. He remembered clearly. He once told the boy that wiping this chip would mean severing their connection for good. Taking the chip without a word, he ran a full wipe protocol, then walked away toward the wasteland, his thoughts a tangled storm. Was he leaving the town or leaving Yuki? Before vanishing from view, he paused and spoke to Ulia. "Tell Yuki I've been deeply disappointed in him these past few days. If someone is willing to teach you with everything they have and you respond with scorn, that's the greatest insult to knowledge." With a final cold glare, Xiangshan turned and disappeared into the horizon. What Xiangshan didn't know was that everything had been orchestrated by Ulia from the shadows. After a brief silence, he seemed to let it all go. He was leaving anyway. No point dragging baggage along. Yet, when it came to Yuki, his only disciple and the one who once saved his life, things weren't so simple. It wasn't attachment, but something heavier. Suddenly he stopped and said to Ulia, "If he stays true to his path and doesn't lose his way, he'll grow into someone remarkable." With those words, Xiangshan mounted his donkey and rode off, his figure fading into the endless desert. But just then, a lazy, mocking voice rang out from behind. The newcomer? None other than Enoch. But gone was the clunky engineer look. He was completely transformed. Xiangshan's gaze sharpened like a blade. "So, you really had the guts to show up again?" Enoch met him with a smug smirk. "What? You think you could still stop me?" His tone reeked of confidence, as if something powerful now had his back. Turns out, just before his death, Leaf secretly passed on the coordinates of his organization's base to Enoch. That tip not only got Enoch in touch with the group, but also earned him a set of brutal combat techniques. Still, tower tech martial arts? That was a new one, even for Xiangshan. Xiangshan couldn't help but laugh. "Did someone swap your brain with a toaster? Who told you it was a good idea to run your mouth at me?" But Enoch had already lost it. His voice cracked with rage, like he needed to scream away years of resentment. Back in the town, he used to be the one calling the shots. Ever since Xiangshan showed up, everything changed. People stopped caring about him and started worshipping the so-called hero. Xiangshan shrugged. "Your logic's so bad it deserves a museum exhibit." He narrowed his eyes. "Since you had the guts to crawl out in front of me, are you ready for the consequences?" With no more words to spare, he brought his hands together, steady as a blade. A hum of energy pulsed through his limbs, condensing into a razor-sharp edge. This was a precise counter to military-grade martial systems, known as military combat arts. This style was developed for war zones. It's not something civilians could ever access, like trying to punch with a battleship. If classic martial arts were born to challenge injustice, then military combat systems were designed to crush it. Just as Xiangshan was ready to strike, the mayor cut in, worried that killing Enoch might violate the Dyson Accord and revoke their protection. Xiangshan scoffed. Protection? He was never even on the damn list. But then something hit him. A sudden wave of discomfort pulsed through his chest. He froze for a second. He had no heart, and yet, why did it feel like something inside him skipped a beat? Above, a drone hummed silently across the sky. That's when it clicked. The feeling. It wasn't fear. It was electromagnetic interference. Xiangshan locked eyes with the hovering drone, as if seeing right through to whoever was behind the screen. And sure enough, hidden deep within the nearby wasteland, a shadowy figure was watching him, grinning from the dark. Judging by that level of surveillance, the guy probably had long-range cyber eyes or hypersensitive auditory implants feeding him every move. This man was ranked 98th on the Outlaw Tiger board, Goliath, the chain missile sniper. He had dispatched a drone to tail Enoch, who was secretly implanted with an explosive parasite called Boom Core. Defying orders was no longer an option for him. Meanwhile, Goliath had climbed to the top of a trash mountain, the perfect vantage point. At long range, his style, ballistic combat, was absolutely dominant. He chuckled while setting his scope. They say the old martial masters hated ballistic techniques. Truth is, they just feared we'd blow every other tradition into oblivion. Sure, that warrior jammed my drone signal, but I expected that. Against an inner strength fighter, controlling data flow is step one. Their so-called energy waves? Drop that into my jamming net and it sinks without a trace. And the idiot actually jumped into the air. It just makes it easier to put a bullet through him. At that moment, Xiangshan sensed it. Something was slicing through the air toward him at incredible speed. If it's powder-based, the round flies at 3,000 pilnosims. If it's railgun tech, more like 8,000. But using a drone for targeting, that screams extreme range precision shot. Now, where's the shooter? By his estimation, the bullet would hit in just 1 to 2 seconds. For a cybernetic warrior, 1 or 2 seconds could stretch into an eternity, if, and only if, he could instantly detect the shooter's muzzle and react before the bullet left the barrel. But the enemy wasn't a fool. He was trained, too. He'd likely anticipated Xiangshan's dodge. If so, the bullet would already be screaming toward where Xiangshan planned to land, which meant returning to the original landing spot was a death trap. Taking down the drone and falling straight back? No chance. Though the air offered no solid footing, some fluid-like materials, when struck fast enough, momentarily behaved like solids, providing just enough resistance for a mid-air pivot. It was like trying to swim through mud, yet somehow slicing through it at light speed. Then, 2 high explosive shells exploded out of nowhere, streaking through the sky from a distance. Enoch cackled maniacally. "That's it, boss. Blow him to pieces. Let him burn." But Xiangshan hated ballistic combat with a passion. To him, true heroism meant standing your ground, alone, even against the odds. Ballistic warfare? It was reckless, indiscriminate. Once a bullet leaves the chamber, it belongs to no one. Whatever happens next, no one takes the blame. Once a bullet is fired, it's out of your hands, and anyone in its path becomes a potential casualty. That's the brutal flaw of firearms. Too easy to harm the wrong people. Even poison, often condemned by martial artists as dishonorable, causes less collateral damage than a bullet. When 2 equally skilled fighters clash, the battle often becomes a dance of dodges and feints, neither daring to fully commit. And every stray shot becomes a deadly threat to the innocent bystanders caught in the middle. Right now, 2 such people are standing too close. Judging by the trajectory, they're right in the line of fire, headed straight toward the mayor and Ulya. Xiangshan twisted and flipped through the air, dodging 12 bullets in rapid succession. Then, with a sudden snap kick, he sent the mayor flying to safety. But Ulya, she was far too heavy to move in time. A deafening blast followed. She took the full force of the explosive shell. Xiangshan's eyes narrowed. So, he's targeting me. Must have lost sight when that junk flew up. If he's predicting my path but still getting thrown off by debris, Xiangshan murmured, "I've got a rough fix on your position." He glanced toward Ulya. Her mech was belching thick, dark smoke. She'd taken a hit. After all these past days, he had hidden among the garbage heaps, recovering in silence, absorbing fragments of enemy data to deepen his understanding of this twisted world. With his cybernetic eye, he had mapped the entire scrapyard, every blind spot, every ditch. It was all stored in his neural chip. He now had a solid idea where the sniper was hiding. Factoring in terrain, the distance could range from 4 to 10 kilometers, with only 4 viable sniping spots in that range. By tracking the drone swarm's movement and analyzing bullet trajectories, he could narrow it down further. If the fire rate stayed consistent, he'd only need to dodge under 1,000 rounds to reach him. But the sniper clearly wasn't planning to let him close that distance. Bullet 14 was aimed at the mayor. Bullet 15 went for Ulya. The sniper was betting he'd risk his life to protect them both. Xiangshan's expression darkened. Has forcing heroes to protect civilians actually become a formal tactic written into combat theory textbooks? These maniacs, how could they treat human life so cheaply? These are people, not just collateral. No matter who you are or where you hide, you'll answer for what you've done today. The sniper wasn't just skilled. He was a monster. Those first 2 bullets were clean kill shots, but Xiang Shan evaded them mid-air with terrifying precision. The pressure form of the tri-core gun style relies on shots intentionally missing to manipulate movement, but the death net it weaves, that's all too real. Any stray round can end a life. No way. After unloading so many rounds, not a single hit? Not even a graze? Wait a second. He's closing in. That guy's charging me for close combat. Bad news, I suck at close quarters fighting. Last time, I barely beat Leaf by using the Apocalypse tank technique. But if he beat Leaf head-on, then I don't stand a chance toe-to-toe, which means my only shot at winning lies in a few seconds while he's sprinting toward me. I have to exploit that gap. This guy isn't some clueless brute. He's a close combat expert who also understands ranged tactics. He's not exploiting weaker foes, he's engaging on even ground. Only by defeating a fighter who also understands gunfire tactics can I truly prove my path is the real deal. I remember this high-speed movement technique. It's called the supersonic step. Mastering it is like throwing punches while standing in crashing waves. The push-off angle of the legs has to be just right, too shallow, and my prosthetic won't get enough grip. Friction's too low, too steep, and I might leap into the air, turning myself into an easy sniper target. And if my speed stays constant, I'm as good as dead. Predictable movement is a death sentence in this fight. That's why I layered shockwaves through the air to let me change direction mid-sprint using pressure shifts. I'm almost there. I can literally see the bullet trails slicing through the sky, that busted warship panel up ahead. It'll make the perfect shield for a quick pivot. From afar, Goliath narrowed his eyes. So, he dove into the wreckage, trying to bounce his angle off the wall. Too bad my drones can't keep up with those sudden turns. And worse, I didn't station any inside that wreck. Trying to pinpoint my sniping location? Please. Long-range firepower isn't guesswork. It's physics and precision math. I just need to nudge my barrel a few millimeters, hell, even microns. And an entire bullet path shifts dramatically. No close combat fighter can ever outpace the speed of a gunman adjusting aim. The faster he moves, the tighter he walks into my bullet storm. I even left a few drones floating in decoy spots just to throw him off. One wrong guess, and I gained 10 golden seconds to line up the kill shot. And he really fell for it. Trying to bounce off a vertical wall mid-dash? That's textbook suicide. No traction, no dodge, dead on arrival. Wait, what? He landed like that? I missed. Fine, let's turn his path into a minefield. I'll paint his entire route with bullets. Meanwhile, Xiang Shan quickly realized this cloud of fine dust would scatter most electromagnetic signals. It's the perfect cover against thermal or radar tracking. Judging from the trajectory patterns, there's no way the sniper is at point A or D. That leaves only B and C. There's no room for guesswork now. He'd have to read the bullet's movement, like measuring death in motion. A cyber warrior's reflexes run on metallized neural circuits, faster than insects, faster than anything with a spinal cord wrapped in myelin. If he pulled the trigger the moment I was falling, then that bullet would arrive at a precise moment. No guesswork, just physics. Even if I don't know which nest he's hiding in, the bullet will always pass through a narrow time window, and inside that window, there's one perfect microsecond where it slips right between my fingers. Empty the mind, silence the instinct, erase the fear. Then, through the arc of that bullet, Xiang Shan locked in on Goliath's exact location. "Damn it!" Goliath cursed. "All those shots missed. Dust is messing up visibility and the drones picked up nothing. Show yourself, you bastard! Where the hell are you hiding? I'm getting nothing." Suddenly a shadow cut across the edge of his screen. Goliath panicked, switching from zoom to wide-angle mode. "The dust! It's shifting! No way! He's only now starting to accelerate. Wait a second, that's the bullet I fired a second ago. That guy. Is he seriously sprinting straight toward me, using his own bullet craters as stepping stones?" In gun martial arts, distance is everything. Between 7 to 5 kilometers lies the zone of absolute dominance. Anyone outside that range is just a target waiting to drop. But once you cross the 4-kilometer line, the tables begin to turn. The farther you close in, the more that long-range advantage starts to fade. At that point, a high-precision cyber eye can track muzzle movements with terrifying clarity. Yet, once you're within 100 meters, gunfighters reclaim the upper hand, because close-range bullets leave no room for reflexes. Only when you're inside that final meter can hand-to-hand combat truly take control. Which means the next battlefield will be that golden 100 meters. He's racing to seize that crucial range, the very stretch where bullets and fists collide. He's even dragging the fight toward terrain that plays to his strengths. Current distance, 2,000 meters. And for every 10 meters I gain, I lose just a sliver of my reaction time. Still, I charge forward. The closer you get, the shorter the time between the muzzle flash and the pain. Every step forward is a gamble with death. It's like a rhythm game on speed mode. Miss a beat, and the price isn't a low score, it's your life. But I have no choice. I've got no long-range gear. If I want to win, I have to fight him up close. That means charging straight through this explosion zone to reach that walking tank. One wrong move, and I'll get launched by the shockwave. Easy pickings for a sniper shot. My heavy cyber body can take it, no problem, but your scrawny frame. Let's see if you can handle another welcome gift. Damn, he landed a hit. Goliath's timing and spread control are way beyond what Rafe could pull off. He manipulated the angles and intervals, forcing me to deflect the decoys first, then finished it off with 2 precision shots aimed right between my eyes. If I try to block that final round, the rest of the shots will rip my cyber body to pieces. Goliath burst into laughter. "Haha! This is my finishing move. I've studied your arms. Those metal limbs can't handle the pressure of my last bullet." Zhang Shan scoffed. "Oh, guess your intel missed one thing. My arms emit high-frequency shockwaves. And now, I've got you." Just then, Goliath hurled a shiny metal orb into the air. No, it's way too close to his own face. If it were a real bomb, he'd be taking the blast himself, which means it's not an explosive at all. It's metal particle aerosol, his last-ditch smokescreen. Knew it. Good old Iron Bloom, officially called metal particle aerosol. But people on the field just call it Iron Bloom or Flash Dust. Some folks even nickname it Wifey because it does everything. Blinds enemies, saves your life, and maybe even helps you cook. A must-have for any wandering hero. First off, metal is a superb conductor. Once it seeps into circuitry, it can short out entire power grids in seconds. It's also great for blocking EMPs and laser weapons. Mix it with the right compounds and you can either cause explosions or patch up minor armor damage. Best part? It's dirt cheap. Old-school vigilantes used to toss this stuff around like budget smoke bombs. The trick to handling Iron Bloom? Just don't let it touch you. Worst case, flush it out with your cooling system and you're good. Goliath stared at the shadow forming on the smoke-covered ground. That figure, rising from the haze, looked almost divine. In the next instant, Zhang Shan stomped him straight into the dirt. "Mercy! Please, hero! I used to fight for justice too. I swear, I was dragged into this for loyalty's sake. Spare me, just this once." Zhang Shan replied coldly. "Relax. I'm not into torturing enemies. I'll make it quick." Suddenly, tendrils burst out from Goliath's body, lashing out and binding Zhang Shan instantly. "Ha ha! You thought I had no trump card? This is the latest weapon from the demonic sect, parasitic tentacles." But before he could even gloat, Zhang Shan ripped him apart like wet paper. No hesitation, no mercy.